Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for listening in or watching in to our Battery Insiders podcast. We're here live in Berlin at the Future Battery Forum, which we're super delighted to be at. I'm very excited to have Andreas with us, who is the Chief Commercial Officer and Digital Officer at Hydrovolt. And today we want to talk about this really important topic of recycling. We know it comes back and people keep mentioning it, and always this big question about recycling. And we want to explore a bit your approach with Hydrovolt and some of the things you have learned on this journey. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. It's really exciting to have the opportunity to join your podcast and talk about recycling, something that I'm extremely passionate about. So thank you for that. And my name is Andreas. I am the Chief Commercial and Digital Officer of Hydrovolt. Hydrovolt is a joint venture between Northvolt and Norsk Hydro. And having those owners, they are not only owners, they have also been extremely important contributors in the establishment of our first plant in Fredrikstad. So we had extremely qualified people from both the owner organizations who were part of setting up that facility, and that is why we were able to do it so quickly and so good. And today we have a capacity in Fredrikstad of approximately 12,000 tons that would equate to 25,000 EVs on average. And what we do is basically we have a very modular approach to how we want to solve recycling, because we saw that the key challenge is actually the collection and logistics of the feedstock. Because the cars, they end their lives where they end their lives, and the recyclers need to get a hold of them and basically transport them to where they will be processed. And if you have one central big processing facility, that logistics will be extremely complicated, because you will need to move big packs with charge long distances, and that is both extremely costly and challenging. So what we do is we break the process up into different steps. So we can do pre-treatment very close to where the materials end their lives, and that is really key. Because we will then establish small facilities close to, say, big scrapyards, for instance, who could receive these end-of-life vehicles, so that we can actually take out the electricity and dismantle the pack very locally. And then we will just transport discharged, short-circuited modules to central processing. And that is good for Hydrovolt in terms of optimizing the cost of logistics. It's good for the society because it is much safer to transport discharged packs, and has a lot of benefits. And after we have collected and done the discharging and dismantling, the next step in Hydrovolt is crushing and sorting. And that is what we focus extremely heavily on, to be able to optimize the black mass coming out of crushing and sorting EV batteries. And that feedstock is so diverse. It's so many different types of batteries coming from different OEMs and different car models. So to be able to mix that and really get the highest recovery rates possible in the most sustainable way possible is basically our key mission. And we then will partner up with refineries who can process the black mass and turn that into new critical raw materials. And the great thing about batteries is that when they reach end of the first life, you recycle it, and then it can become a new battery again and again in eternity. So recycling will be an extremely important source of critical raw materials for production of new batteries in Europe and further electrification on the continent.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think it's really interesting, your approach right there. I think there's a lot of talk at the moment about later in the process, right? So kind of, the pyro and the hydro and different, approaches. But as you say, first you have to get your black mass. And I know it's a hot commodity. I just spent a bit of time at a few conferences where everyone was looking for black mass, because there's also some capacity, especially also in China and others.
And black mass is not a standardized product, right?
Not at all.
It can come in all different qualities. So just to be able to produce the best black mass possible is a big challenge in itself.
Is there something you see, maybe just a quick follow-up one, right? Because you mentioned that, because I think that's a big issue right now, right? That we don't, and I think it's similar, like even if you then recycle, right? Like later on, I know some of the recyclers, and they maybe get some lithium out of it, and then the question is, what is battery-grade lithium? And then every manufacturer has different requirements, and OEM, etc. And I think if you started a bit earlier, you said just on the black mass, right? So I think, what could be done there potentially? Like, do you see any approaches, people trying to kind of standardize a bit more, or is it more from you, the industry-led, that you said we want to provide the best black mass possible, and that's how we define best in this space?
That's a very important question, and we are all sitting in the same boat. We need to decarbonize as much as possible, as quick as possible. And the way to do that is by being open, collaborative in the value chain and ensure that everyone play each other good. And we produce black mass, but we don't process it. So by having good dialogues with the different processors, we can figure out what do we need to do to actually be able to supply the best black mass possible for the hydromet facilities.
And is there maybe just quickly for our listeners, because I'm sure some here are curious, are like, if people are looking for black mass, should they contact you right now? Or are you saying, oh, we're done, we have all of our relationships, we have sufficient demand, or you're always open to talk?
We are always open to talk, and it's so much innovation going on in this value chain right now. So I think it's extremely important to be open and to talk to both the big players but also the small startups that are really disrupting the way recycling is being done. And we see that with all the innovation throughout the entire value chain, from pack assembly to cell manufacturing, all these things have huge impact for what is the best way to recycle that material. And we see, new chemistries coming, like LFP, has been big in China, is becoming more and more relevant in Europe as well, and it needs to be recycled then in Europe at a certain point, right? So just to come up with the best solutions possible there, I think it's very important to be open and to have dialogues with the different players. So yes, we are absolutely interested in talking to as many players as possible in the value chain.
That's great to hear. I think some listener might be curious. You might get some outreach. But and another thing is, because also we had this topic yesterday, right? Like do we need a European supply chain, comprehensive, how well established? And so we had some great panels and discussion on this yesterday. And I think it's similar here from a recycling topic, right? We have the EU battery regulation, which mandates, right? You have recycling quota. You also have to use your recycled material again in new batteries. So that's really exciting. You have to get to this high grade. Now there's a lot of questions I see about, are we going to process everything in Europe, or are we actually going to ship it to China, and then it's going to be refined there, and then brought back? I mean, you already have a cell maker in your joint venture, so that's exciting. I'm sure they want material at some point. So how do you envision it? Is it now more about open market? Anybody can buy our black mass. There's a business, and then they supply the materials to whoever they want to, or the idea that it should be in the loop, it should come back, for example, to Northvolt, so they get these materials for their factories.
Yes, Northvolt, first of all, is a very important partner for Hydrovolt, so we will supply them with black mass. We will also have other partners, because certain OEMs could demand a closed loop, and closed loop is also something a relevant thing to define together in the industry. What does that actually mean? Is it on an atom level? Do you want your exact same raw materials back, or do you want the same quantity of the same quality back? Because that's two very different things to set up. And here there are different requests from different clients and potential clients. But going back to your question on closing the loop, I think it's extremely important that Europe are able to close the loop on the continent, that we can actually have a complete value chain in Europe with all the steps required, from cell manufacturing to the applications where the cells are having their first or second or third life, to the recycling, and also to the refineries and PCAM, CAM, all the steps needed to have a complete value chain in Europe.
Great. And I think then there's another thing, right? You touched on this a bit, and yesterday another topic came up is this discussion about having a standardized cell format. This was, I think, a few years back, there was all the rage, right? One of these OEM topics, should there be? And of course, we have some approaches by some OEMs like Volkswagen, approached, etc. But overall, we know it's quite complex. There's a lot of different things going on, and I'm sure you see it in your daily life. So I guess maybe some of the things, maybe what could help, also from a recyclability standpoint, because we hear a lot about glued, which really well-glued systems, but then they're really safe. But again, very difficult for anybody else to take apart. So some of your thoughts on that, maybe?
Yeah, that's a very relevant topic for the recyclers. And of course, there's always the, how do you balance performance, safety, recyclability, and all these different things. And what we very proactively initiate is talks with cell manufacturers, but also with assemblers of, say, battery packs, so that we at least can feed back the knowledge and experience we have so far, and ensure that is part of the design, that it is taken account for, and it is part of the decision in terms of how you actually assemble the pack. Because certain ways of doing it will have a great impact on how much recovery rates or how high recovery rates you can achieve. But then also we as recyclers, we also need to adapt and ensure that we adjust the processes so we are able to recycle regardless of how they are basically assembled.
Great. And I guess another last topic on this one would be, because you already brought up LFP,
yeah.
Right? And it's one of these, for me personally, a really fascinating story as well, right? Where, for many people it came quite sudden in a way. And of course, the lot of capacity built up also in China, and a lot of advancement blade, and lots of great development also on the pack level. But of course, it's a big topic for recycling because of the raw materials in there. You don't have your nickel anymore, you don't have your cobalt. Maybe at some point you even go to a sodium mine, so then you don't even have lithium anymore. So how does this affect maybe how you see yourself develop, maybe how attractive your black mass? Because I know some recycling companies, they're like, okay, 10-20% we can deal with LFP right now, but don't make it much more. It won't be as attractive anymore. So maybe some of your learnings there, how you, especially because you want to sell yours to the next step. And of course there from you, it's processing, you don't really care probably too much in your process, but then the people after you who refine it, they care a lot what's in there.
They care a lot, and that is also a space where there is a lot of exciting innovation these days. Processors of black mass coming from LFP are maturing. There is a lot of exciting research. This is still early stage, but we see that the process for recycling LFP can be much simpler than the one for NMC, which of course helps the business case. And different chemistries will need different business models for them to become just economically viable, but we still need to recycle the content and ensure that we get processes in place that can do that in a profitable way. Otherwise it won't make any sense, especially for the recycler. But it's a lot of promising projects on LFP recycling, and we see that we can find partners and have good solutions for that as well.
Fantastic. With this, Andreas, I want to thank you a lot for coming on today on the Battery Insider podcast. My name is Dr. Simon Engelke, founder and chair of Battery Associates, and really appreciate you taking the time and you all taking the time to listen in. And we're looking forward to another conversation very soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.